The Liver Buildings, where else could we be other than the city of Liverpool, with the Liver Birds on top looking out across the Mersey and its estuary. Well, not so long ago, all the big ships used to sail into here, the Empress of Britain, the Ivernia, the Franconia, all the big boats coming in from the United States. Not anymore, but the Albert Dock here never looking better as it's been completely rebuilt. Well, hello and welcome to our fourth day's coverage of the Kellogg's Tour of Britain, and what a race it's turning out to be. There were no bigger crowds than yesterday here in the city of Liverpool, and that controversial sprint finish was second place between Joey McLaughlin in the green jersey and Malcolm Elliott. It really was a great fighting finish by both riders, and Joey McLaughlin kept his place despite a protest by Elliott in the sprint finish. And why not? Joey lives here, and his 5 sisters and his 5 brothers were part of the massive crowd cheering him home yesterday. Well, let's have a look then at the overall situation as we go into this day, a double day between Stoke and Birmingham, and on top of the leaderboard, Malcolm Elliott. Now just 18 seconds ahead of Joey McLaughlin, Sean Yates in 3rd place, Stephen Roach in 4th, and the man in 5th, of course, Thomas Wegmuller of Switzerland. Few changes behind, though. 2 days ago, Sean Kelly was in 10th place. He's up to 6th now and a real challenger. Darrell Webster is there too in 7th spot. Well, these are the top 10 riders overall on the general classification, but you know the top 13 riders are within 58 seconds of one another, and a blink of the eyelid, and we could have a new leader this morning. Joey McLaughlin's arrived already, so too has Malcolm Elliott. Both are looking perky and ready to go on this morning stage. Malcolm Elliott really is in the hot seat and very conspicuous in this leader's yellow jersey. A rider, though, who will remember the ride through Stoke last year is Neil Martin, the former British champion. He lives near Birmingham, and so he'll have good support through the Potteries. And remember, last year he was out in front, winning most of the day's prizes. Well, one man already at the other end of the course this morning at the city of Stoke-on-Trent is Paul McDowell.
And despite the early hour of the morning, already a huge crowd gathering here in Stoke City. And Phil, you're a man of deft green fingers. You'll know that Liverpool was the first city to host a garden festival. Stoke, in fact, was the second. Now, just as in Liverpool, they're waiting to say farewell to one of their heroes, Joey McLaughlin. Here in Stoke, they're waiting to welcome home one of their local heroes, Steve Jochen, the man who had that bad accident yesterday at the feeding station and damaged his finger. And this is the route that Steve and his colleagues will face this morning. The emphasis very much on sprints. 2 sprints there at Chester and Nantwich, and just 1 climb this morning, Category 4 climb. Then it's down here into the city of Stoke, 4 times round this quite tight circuit, and the winner of each passage will receive one of these splendid trophies. There's Wedgwood, Royal Doulton, Ainsley and Spode. So those are the trophies, and that's the route that await the riders. Back now to Phil Liggett.
Thank you very much indeed, Paul. Here are the riders again. Another long day in the saddle for them, led off here from the Albert Dock by Stephen Roach in that World Championship jersey. A title, by the way, he's got to defend, if he can, in a couple of weeks' time. Still a little time for a joke. That's always a good sign, I think, that Roach is coming back onto form. And a minor collision for Sean Kelly, anxious to push our motorbike out of the way. Right, well, we're going, and I think I can never recall another occasion when an international bicycle race has gone through the Mersey Tunnel. So it's down under the Mersey and across onto the Wirral and into the darkness. I should imagine, Paul Sherwin, that this is rather like riding through one of those tunnels on the Galibier Pass in the Tour de France.
But fortunately, this one is very well lit, Phil. The trouble with the Tour de France descents is sometimes there's no lighting at all.
Out the other side then. And the riders are still neutralised, by the way. The lead car, driven by Pat McQuaid, waving a red and white checkered flag. And until that flag is pulled in, the riders are not allowed to race. No payment due to the riders today, although I imagine race organiser Alan Rushton will be paying the bill sooner or later, but the riders keep on going, heading off now along the A41 road towards the city of Chester, some 18 miles distant. Neil Martin, this looks like here, in a little bit of trouble today, Neil. He has an abscess in one of those places we can't really mention, but cyclists do get them, and he's adjusted there the height of his saddle. This is Sean Yates, who's been one of the stars of the race this week. He really has. And there's £100 being shown on the blackboard there of referee Keith Ordas, and he's telling the riders, because a special sprint here offered by a local bike dealer, K Cycles, here in Bromborough, and it looks like Andy Johnson's going to take the £100 prize for the Marshall Solar Sport team. So that's £100 in the bank for the Air Marshall team, and a good start for them. They're one of the smaller teams in the race, but Paul Sheridan remarked to me earlier today, they really are beginning to make an impression on the race. Service on the move for Malcolm Elliott. Well, at the moment, no problems. The race is not flat out. And as I think I told you earlier in the week, you are allowed to hold on to the following team car, providing the team car does not improve the position of the rider in the bunch, and that the holding on doesn't take too long. So the attack's beginning to come here. This is Jean Manfrin of France, from the CAS Mavic team, with a little extra assistance from Sportlife this week here in Britain. And Jos Lammert, Johan, and these two riders have broken clear, and we are around 18 miles into the day. A good attack, possibly. Let's see what's happening. The counter-attacks are coming up to them. This has been a very active opening few miles. I suspect that the fact they're only going to be in the saddle for something like 2 hours has given them some sort of inspiration. Stephen Roach here, looking a lot more serious than he did yesterday. You may remember the early stages, laughing and joking, 1 or 2 telephone calls. Not so today. That was Kelly. This is Robert Miller. Miller's ridden a very strong race indeed, and our old friend Neil Martin here still having trouble with his saddle. That looks like Ian Binder there, rival teammate, giving him a helping hand. The first TV time sprint here as we enter the outskirts of Chester. And it's a good win there for Sean Yates, particularly important because in fact Yates has gathered up a 3-second time bonus there. Walsham second. The TV time sprint leader, Nick Barnes, was third. And it's beginning to look a battle there, Paul, between Barnes, in fact, and Walsham for that jersey. But now again here, Manfrin is on the attack as we go out towards Nantwich. He's been a very active rider today, Paul. I don't know if you know very much about him. Frankly, I don't know a lot about him. He's not a new professional, is he?
No, he was actually a professional last year with the CAS team. He finished second in Paris-Bourges, a 2-day stage race in France. As you can look down the road here, you can see that he's already going very, very quickly away. I think what he's trying to do here is harden up the race, so maybe Sean Kelly can place an attack later on.
Well, that looks like Paul Verschoor, who started a counter move from the centre of the pack. He's jumped down. The best place to attack is where the leaders don't see you coming. Paul Verschoor then, he rides with a very typical Belgian style, very low, pulls himself forward on the saddle. I don't know if this is a position which they seem to preserve themselves in for the cobblestones, Paul, all the time over in Belgium.
Well, the Belgian riders do tend to ride a lot lower, and Paul Verschoor has one little nervous thing that he does, is he's always adjusting his saddle, raising it up a couple of millimetres and lowering it down a couple of metres, so maybe later on we'll manage to see that.
When you think after 13 years as a professional cyclist, you get to know how high his saddle should be. Well, he's joined the leader, and so we've now got 2 men out in front. In the rolling roads, heading out towards Shropshire, on the Cheshire borders here. And a little check over his shoulder to see what's happening, and this is what's happening. Absolutely nothing. Steve Jockey there riding no-handed, making 1 or 2 adjustments. We're going rapidly back up to the front, so we'll get an absolute idea now of the sort of gap that has begun to develop. These 2 riders may well have hit the bunch at the right time. We've had a lot of attacking riding, and some of it involving big riders at the head of the classification. Those moves have been countered one way and another. These 2 riders are a little further down the overall. In fact, Verschoor in the front here is lying in 43rd place, and there, while we're talking, is the gap at the moment. That's official at 39 seconds, and Jean Manfrin is 47th overall. They're both almost 20 minutes behind Malcolm Elliott, so possibility here they will be given a little bit of their head.
As we look down to the bunch here, Phil, here's the reigning British professional champion, Steve Jockin, who's coming into his hometown, suffering a little bit from the crash he had yesterday.
Time for food at the front, and even though this stage is in fact very, very short by professional cycling standards, 57 miles, the riders never will ride very far without eating a little bit of food. Must keep that stomach busy with digesting food, because of course it's not just today, it's all this morning rather, it's also this afternoon when they've got to keep going on towards Birmingham. And as you can see then, the gap is beginning to grow now, and the group is showing a little bit of lethargy here. not too willing to attack. I heard a nice story this morning from one of the journalists on the race. Apparently one of the riders we haven't seen too much of in this race, Alan Percy from the ML team, he's only been a professional for the length of this race, which started, don't forget, in Newcastle on Tuesday. And he's been attacking very early on some of the mornings. And apparently he's become the banana king because the riders are throwing bananas at him for making the race too hard early on. And there we are, meanwhile, back at Nantwich in the TV time sprint, and these two riders now well clear. Over the front, they're not really contesting it, neither riders in the competition for that white jersey, but Manfrin goes over the line first, Versura takes second place. The battle really there will be for third spot and the remaining point, and here it is now. This is the leader of the competition, Barnes, much more determined than the other two were. Barnes scoring one nicely here over his arch rival. I think he lost some of his food as well there, out of his back pocket, but there's confirmation. Manfrin, Versura and Barnes. The man Barnes beat was Mark Walsham. This is a competition developing now very much between those two riders, and it could in fact find its climax in Westminster on Sunday afternoon. We hope you'll be down there to see that great afternoon out, by the way. Back with the leaders then, the gap growing all the time here. 7:23 it was, and the leaders have gone through this level crossing, and this is the main field. Now the rule here is quite explicit. If the leaders had been stopped, they would have been given the gap again, but if the main field is stopped, there's absolutely nothing you can do. You can't go forward and stop the leaders, so they are now gaining time, while the bunch, I'm afraid, have to cool their heels. And doesn't it seem a long time? Train goes through. The judges are saying, in fact, that they have been waiting here for 1 minute and 14 seconds. The confirmation then now that the breakaway has gone up to 8 minutes 37 seconds. A little bit of a gift, Paul, but everybody needs a bit of luck.
Well, everyone does need a little bit of luck, but what you have to do is it's the advantage to the attacking riders. A little anecdote about Paul Versura in second place here. He was the first Belgian I ever saw when I raced abroad for the first time. He'd won 33 races that year, and he was the reigning Belgian champion. There was a race in Spain that Tyrrell called the Tour of Malaga, and he won 6 of the stages, and so I was somewhat impressed.
I would imagine you were. I would have been too. Well, he's been a pro now for 13 seasons. A long time. This is the only climb. It's a 4th category climb, and it's coming just before we hit Newcastle under Lyme, on the outskirts of the city of Stoke-on-Trent, and Manfrin is really now keeping this tempo high. They've been told now that the lead is going up towards the 10-minute mark here, so they know that barring accidents, they're going to contest the sprint finish together down in Stoke-on-Trent. The main field are quite clearly no longer interested. They've got the distance. A little bit disheartened perhaps by the closure of the level crossing as we go over the M6 motorway now, and that's a sure sign we're on the outskirts of Stoke. And the riders always near the front, the PMS Doors team, the Fagor team and the CAS team. I often wonder how these riders are going to decide now on the finish, how they're going to outwit one another, because they've shared the pace so far. They've been strange allies, wanting each other's assistance. Now they're going to have to work out their own sprint finish.
Well, it's always a lot more difficult from a group of 2, Phil, than a group of 6 or 7, because you've been working man for man, and it really is difficult to decide how to lead the sprint out or to come from behind, and it is a difficult decision to have to make.
Well, here are the two leaders, and Manfrin is on the front. Look at that now, Paul. 10 minutes 20 seconds, so there's no doubt we're looking at the winner. It's a question of which one we're looking at. Kelly on the front here. This is on the climb, and this race has got quite hard now. Gianetti goes on the far right. Lillywhite again, the rider who he's been in contention with for these mountains. A good sprint by Chris Lillywhite. He really is the master of the short sprints on the climbs. Lillywhite gets the odd point there in the King of the Mountains. Gianetti doesn't score, but there won't be any change overall in that competition. And now here we are outside Stoke Station and the North Staffordshire Hotel, as that is the finishing line in 4 laps time for the two leaders. A little bit further back, Lillywhite is causing a little bit of trouble in the main field by that sprint, because it looks to me as though the bunch here is beginning to split up. Darrell Webster having a go off the front. And good to see Darrell in the thick of the action after almost a season off with injury.
Kellogg's sprints have been there as well, and then are the two leaders.
The white flag then, another sprint for TV Times taken by Verschoor. These are special preems, by the way, as well now here in the city of Stoke-on-Trent. Preems, remember, mean a prize at the white flag on the route. And this is Webster on the front here, now in pursuit, joining him here, Marshall Guéant, the yellow jersey leader of the Tour de France last season. Didn't have quite such a successful tour this year with the Toshiba team, but Darrell Webster, he'll have his hands full with young Darrell if he's on full form, because he has a tremendous turn of speed. And way below us, out on the circuit, the whole field. Right, that looks like Webster. Shed Guéant as he comes onto the circuit here up Station Road. There is Marshall Guéant. Oh dear me, the whole field have caught up as well. The red jersey of Rob Holden. Great success story for him this week. He's led the under-23 competition, and not just that, it's nice because he's the youngest man in the race at 20 years of age. The oldest man, he won't like me for saying it, is Jack Kershaw, who's 38, and he was in the forefront yesterday when the race went near to his hometown of Oldham. 4 laps to go then for Darrell Webster. The two leaders already on the circuit elsewhere, of course. And this is the front portion of the field. It isn't the main field at all, because the field split soon after the climb as they turned into a crosswind. But we can tell you, in fact, that one rider in all sorts of trouble at the back of the field. Oh, look at this. Well, almost a little mistake brought down Paul Verschoor there, as the two riders didn't hear the car coming up in the wind, probably. But as I was saying, the one man who has suffered today, Paul, a broken frame for Ronan Pensek, and he's now off the back by, we believe, 7 or 8 minutes, and he's going to be out of the overall situation.
Well, that's an unfortunate thing about bike racing. Sometimes you can have an accident and get back very quickly when the riders are going along quite slowly, as you've seen them once or twice in the Tour so far. But if, when the race is really hard and coming down, something like what has just happened to Ronan Pensek, you break your frame or you have a puncture at the wrong time, there's absolutely no chance of getting back.
The sad thing is that a little accident like that ruins all those days of effort, and it is very, very sad. Webster here now being reeled in here by the main field. He's been out there for a lap and a half. It's not going to last because the big guns are firing now at the front of that bunch. Robert Miller and Sean Yates are looking rather determined here, and they're going to wheel him in. There goes the big man, Sean Yates. He's been as solid as a rock in this race, doing a marvellous job defending the lead of Malcolm Elliott, and by so doing, he's occupied that 3rd place overall as well. The lead coming down rapidly now. Manfrin and Verschoor back to 6:37. They're not going to worry a bit about that. They're out for the stage win, and all that lovely pottery being offered here by the area that's made it famous for the potteries. Now then, Verschoor in 2nd place, Manfrin in the lead. Do you think the experience of Verschoor is going to tell, Paul?
Well, Verschoor in the past has won 3 Tour de France stages. The first time I covered it on television with you, he won in Paris. He's also won the last stage of the Tour de France on the Champs-Élysées, so he's a very good sprinter, but as I've said, a sprint from 2 riders is very difficult.
Very difficult indeed to judge, because both riders try to maneuver the other man out in front, of course, to get the element of surprise from the back. Well, we're on the last lap of the 2 leaders, but not with the main field yet. They're coming round at the moment. They are, in fact, a lap behind on the circuit, by the way. The judges calculate times. If they don't cover the complete course, they don't get away with it at all. This is the little group here that's broken clear in those crosswinds. It's led by Stephen Roach, who's becoming to look now as though he's returning to the powerhouse cycling that we saw so much last year when he won those 3 big races, the Tour de France, Tour of Italy, and the world title. Only the 2nd man in the world in the history of cycling to do that. So, Verschoor coming through. A little bit of rain threatening too in the clouds here. And look at this, Verschoor goes through on the inside, and Manfrin really wasn't paying attention. He was waiting for Verschoor to do that, but I think he was expecting him on the other side of the road. And now we've got Verschoor going clear, and Manfrin has made a terrible mistake. He's lost the wheel, and the race is all over. And this man knows it. Kisses to the crowd, arms in the air. Paul Verschoor scores his 1st win of the year. So Verschura over the line. Manfred, I think he'll be equally happy with second place. I think he probably assessed he wasn't going to handle Paul Verschura in the sprint anyway. As Paul Sherwin said, he is very, very rapid. This is the main field coming through now, led by Stephen Roach. They'll get the bell because they are one lap behind today. And it's Roach, Yates, and that is the order of the Fagor boys. We know that Malcolm Elliott and Joey McLaughlin are in here. Now, all the bunch, by the way, let me explain a little point. You do ask the question. All the riders who finish in the same bunch are always given the same time. The man at the front has the same time as the rider at the back. There is no splitting of the gap in between, providing there is no recognizable gap between the riders. That's why you get the big sprint, even at the back of the race. But they sprint for the time, because riders will not take great risks. So for this reason, some riders don't contest the sprint when they know they are safely home in the same time as the rider at the front. And these two riders have just nipped away here from the field as they try to come up. One of them was Keith Reynolds, and the MLMBK team is really having a good mid-term in this race. And I think the other one was our persistent Marshal Gayon, who also went clear. It's Gayon on the left here, and Reynolds is going very well indeed. Reynolds gets the third spot. Gayon is fourth, and the main field coming over the line now. And so the main field led in by Vichot. And that is the result of the morning stage. There's Keith Reynolds, who got the third place. But while all the riders are coming in now, the leaders here of the day are already on the rostrum receiving their winner's prize. And so there is Paul Verschura. The traditional bottle of champagne. Can't hold everything at once, he says. This is the proudest moment of the race. And this is the part the journalists and the television cameras and the press are getting used to now. There's the situation then after the stage 4A this morning. A win for Paul Verschura. Jean Manfred second. Keith Reynolds third. Gayon was fourth. The overall situation, still Elliott on top. The same 18 seconds for McLaughlin. 36 for Yates. 42 seconds for Roach, and Wegmuller 47. A great win for this man Verschura. We'll be back soon. And welcome back to our two-part coverage today of the stages between Liverpool and Birmingham. We saw the first part, and now the people here are waiting for the riders to come out of the hotel, where they've spent precisely 45 minutes galloping down all the food they can before the next 51-mile stage from here in the city of Stoke-on-Trent to the city of Birmingham. Well, earlier we saw the finish between the two leading riders who broke away. Paul Verschura of Belgium getting his first win of the season, and as he says, he's been a professional for 13 years. He beat there the French rider Jean Manfred, and Keith Reynolds taking the third place. But really, there was no change overall, although one rider did have trouble today. That was Ronan Pensek, and he has slipped down the overall classification. Now, there are many people involved in the organisation of this race, and one of them is the police force from England and Wales. And the people in the lead car, the command vehicle as they call it, the White Granada, are all officers of the Gwent Constabulary, but here they represent the Association of Chief Police Officers. They are responsible for controlling this cycle race on the highway, not just for the safety of the riders, but for the safety of all road users. From this vehicle, they are linked to the 14 police outriders who are themselves in the control of two motorcycle-mounted sergeants. At the front of the race, they stop the oncoming vehicles, and behind the race, there are officers to wave those vehicles on again. It is a vacuum that rolls around the countryside, and they do keep us all safe and well, as they do an impossible job bringing this race through a very traffic-clogged area of England every day. The race then goes on. We know that you don't just watch this series of hours this week for the riding itself, you also watch it for the pictures. And England really is a most beautiful country. So let's have a look at it.
conditions and some of the great finishes and some of the awe-inspiring scenery which we've enjoyed so far on the tour. One of the men we've been keeping a close eye on during the tour is with me now, Steve Jochen. Steve, to the home city of Stoke, you must have enjoyed the welcome you got today.
Yes, I did enjoy the welcome. Unfortunately, I wasn't in that leading group that got away. I tried very early on to get into several moves, and it was the sort of the 8th move that went away, and unfortunately I wasn't there. But I tried again coming in towards the Potteries, and the continental teams were keeping it all together for the big finish at the end, maybe for the time bonus that was going. And just going over Bignell End coming into Stoke, the hammer went down a bit. There was crosswinds, it started to rain a bit, and the race split up. So I just come into Stoke in a smaller group, unfortunately.
You're carrying a bit of an injury to your hand after that fall at the feeding station yesterday. How's it feeling?
Well, it's okay. It's just badly bruised around the joint at the moment. There's nothing broken, I don't think. But I've got it well padded up when I'm racing, and it didn't give me much trouble.
Steve, we wish you well. Thank you very much indeed. And to have a look at the route that Steve and the rest of the riders will face going up to Birmingham, we go back now to Phil Liggett.
And here it is then, the day before the long one to Bristol. It's 51 miles, second part of today's race, taking us to Birmingham. No mountains, by the way, but there are 3 TV Times special sprints, so bonuses at stake. Riders rolling away, at least most of them, but this is Alan Percy here. An early wheel change for him. Shouldn't take him too long before he'll be back in the race. And the frame number 3 can only be ridden by one man, the yellow jersey in this race, Malcolm Elliott, making his own adjustments to the brakes there on the front of the bike. But he needn't be in a big hurry, because the level crossing gates have closed here as we've entered Wedgwood Park, and it looks as though the whole race has come to a halt. This is the only thing that will stop an international cycle race. You can't argue with the train. Now, the TV Times sprint was to be here, but the board being held up there by the commissaires saying no sprint, so that has been cancelled. So out past Wedgwood House here, very, very beautiful part of the Potteries. The Trent and Mersey Canal also passes through here, and they have their own railway station as well. Now the action here, the sprint was cancelled, but the race has got off to a cracking start now, leaving the park. Elliott at the front there, Stephen Roach in the World Championship jersey. This is Ian Fagan, and there seems to be a lot of racing left in the legs of these riders today, despite that very short stop. That's Noel Shostek there. Speeds up to 35 miles an hour here. Sean Kelly in the group at the front. Malcolm Elliott following on Kelly's wheel. This is good action now by the stars of the Kellogg's Tour this year.
Well, as the riders here are, it's amazing me how they managed to race so quickly after a break, because the riders only had something like an hour. And it's this break is extremely interesting because Joey McLaughlin has actually missed out at the moment.
Well, these are the teammates of McLaughlin on the front, but the whole field coming down here now. This group has swelled to something like 20 riders on the sprint line there. Frank Hoster was the man to get the points. First time we've seen him. Sean Kelly second, and this is Joey McLaughlin. He's come up on the back of this leading group, so he was a little bit late to react to the attack by Elliott, and Sean Kelly there in the yellow and Roach in the white, but he's done so he saved the day, for the moment at least. Leading group here, something like 40 riders regrouping at the front there. We can see them all as we move away to the front, but they're in a very long line here, so the pressure quite clearly is still on at the front. McLaughlin we've seen in the green. As we go up, the red jersey there of Rob Holden. And on the front, Bernard Richard from the Fagor team. And as we're going to the front here, it looks to me as though a small group of riders have not been caught. They're still ahead and they're going clear. We'll pick them up as soon as we can as they go clear now, heading out away from Stone, leaving the Potteries behind us now, heading out towards Lichfield. These are the leading group. Number 14 there is Adrian Timmis at the back. That's a good move by him. He lives in Cannock, which isn't too far away. This is obviously Noel Shostek at the front from the ADR team. Henri Manders in the white there. Joss Lammert's here in the Toshiba colours, and this group is going clear. Here is Rugeley now, the site of the third TV Time sprint today. Remember, the first one was cancelled and the previous one won by Frank Hoster. No sprint really, Lammerts takes it, but the breakaway here more interested in making time, and this is forcing Fagor under pressure. Robert Miller then doing the work for the Fagor team, followed by Sean Yates, third overall at the moment. Bernard Richard, the only Frenchman in the team, the world champion Stephen Roach. The whole of the Fagor team all doing the work for Malcolm Elliott. These are the leaders.
Well, these boys have gone away at just exactly the right time. As the early break went away, as the early break went away, you can see here Adrian Timmis, followed by Johan Lammerts. These riders were all in the original break that went away before the first Hotspot Sprint competition. Murdy Galder there from the BH team. Adrian Timmis coming through again, and the one rider we haven't seen just yet is Henry Manders, just on the far side of the picture. They made the ideal move of attacking straight over the junction of the two groups.
Well, Manders is the rider who hasn't worked over hard in this group. The young rider here, Shostek, he's only 21, and he'll be very pleased to be in this breakaway group. Look at this though, the Fagor team, we've seen them in action helping Elliott win those two opening stages and trying to get him home in Liverpool as well. And now we're seeing them here trying to limit the losses on that breakaway. Adrian Timmis, by the way, is the best rider in that leading group, and he's over 7 minutes behind. Time gap we're getting is 1 minute 47 seconds, so they're labouring to get clear of the group, but they are beginning to get away. So on the far horizon there, the outskirts of Birmingham, Perry Barr as well. This race could be decided now on the finishing circuit in Birmingham. Be back soon.
Welcome back as the city of Birmingham prepares to greet the riders on the final part of day 4 of the Tour of Britain. And in fact, despite a rather strong wind today, it's been the fastest day of the Tour so far, perhaps softening up some of the riders for that tough ride down to Bristol tomorrow. But back to today, we saw that 5-man breakaway outside Stone, and included in that breakaway was the local rider Adrian Timmis. Well, ahead of Adrian and the rest of the riders now, it's 5 times round this circuit in the city of Birmingham. It looks very straightforward. Just how straightforward will it be? Let's go back now to Phil Liggett.
Well, it should at least, Paul, give us a great finale here, because these 5 riders who have been clear have never really escaped from the grips of the main field. They've only gained 1 minute 45. That's their maximum lead so far, and now they're coming in to the finishing circuit here in Birmingham, led by Noel Shostek of the ADR team on the front. He's the boy in the lime colours there, the little man in the red half sleeves. That's a Javier Merguialdi from Spain, and Adrian Timmis, the local man from Cannock, now on the front. The other rider on the far side there, Henri Manders, in the other white jersey on the right, and that is the main group with Josh Lammerts in the yellow and the blue sleeves. They are the same 5 men we've seen away now since they broke clear after the 12-mile point today. And this looks like Ian Fagan sneaking onto the circuit there. There he is in the distance. Well, he's only just broken away from the field, and he's managed to do a very good ride there to crack the field and escape on this circuit. So he's closing fast, Paul. They've now got the circuits to come. What do you think about Adrian Timmis? And he won here once in the milk race a couple of years ago.
Yeah, well, Adrian knows his finish very well. In fact, he finished second to Alan Piper in one of the Kellogg City Centre races on almost this exact circuit, so he knows the finish very well. He is a local boy, but you've got to look at the 2 Dutchmen who are in this break, because 2 Dutchmen always together are the kind of riders that you've got to always be careful of. They're very, very good finishers.
The Fagor team have had a hard day today, one way or another. They've had to keep Sean Kelly in check, and 1 or 2 other riders who've been just testing the water, softening them up for tomorrow perhaps. But the riders in the lead now, they will not be over concerned with, because once again they are not riders really affecting the overall yellow jersey of Malcolm Elliott. But even so, the momentum of the big bunch is now such that they may yet sweep them up on this finishing circuit. The gap as they came onto the circuit here was just 50 seconds, and now the chase is on to see if they can pull them back. This is Ian Fagan trying to get across the gap. He is approximately 26 seconds behind those 5 leaders, and now we're back here with the leaders. Lammerts on the front. White jersey at the back there is in fact Henri Manders. The other white jersey behind him is the man getting all the cheers here, by the way, Adrian Timmis from the Z Peugeot team. And I'm wondering if we could get a double out of the day here with this man, Noel Sestek, because Sestek on the other side of Manders in that lime green jersey is on for a double for Willy Deboscher, the team manager from Belgium, because this morning it was Paul Verschuren. It seems to be a busy day for Willy Deboscher because also good English friends of his, Martin and Karen, got married today, and it could all happen here for a hat-trick, if you like, at the centre of Birmingham for the finish. On the front then, Szostek right on cue, breaking away or trying to break away here. Young professional Paul, and it would be great to win here.
Well, he is a new professional this year. In fact, he won 2 victories last year. 3 victories as an amateur, and you always got to be very careful with Belgians because they're good finishers. They tend to be able to slip away towards the end, and it looks as if that's exactly what he's trying to do here. But Adrian Timmis trying to keep everything together because Adrian would dearly love to win here in Birmingham.
And Fagan really is doing the ride. The ML MBK boys are having a great time in the Kellogg Tour this year. They've had a poor season by any standard, but they're really trying now to break in. They've been on the attack every day. We saw Keith Reynolds finish 3rd this morning, and now Fagan is trying to make contact with the leaders at the moment. This is the pack here now, and they're chasing hard, but not hard enough, I don't think. The gap is slowly closing, but it's a good day for Malcolm Elliott if they don't catch the leading group. There is the gap. 45 seconds then, that's official, the main field. So they are closing. They've knocked off about 5 seconds since they joined the circuit. Do you think they can get over there, Paul?
Well, it's still feasible, Phil, because you can see the difference in the speed as we look at Ian Fagan here. The bunch are taking about 10 seconds a lap out of this chasing group, so this leading group, sorry, so it is still possible.
Well, it's certainly giving the crowd a lot to shout at. It's made a real good finale here in Birmingham. The race, by the way, has averaged its best average speed of the tour so far this afternoon, a shade over 25 miles an hour. Adrian Timmis anxious to be the winner here again today. The driving force, a teammate, by the way, of Joey McLaughlin in the Peugeot team. And Timmis now, having read the move well today, getting into this breakaway with these 4 other riders. Can he finish it off with a fine win? Szostek on the front. And behind Szostek, Henri Manders. Manders, for me, is the hot tip for the finish because he hasn't done a lot of work here. His manager came up earlier on and sort of told him to slow it down, not overdo it. And by the way, it was a move noted by Willy Deboscher, the manager of the ADR team, who said to me, the Weinmann guy isn't working, because Willy does speak rather good English.
Well, Phil, Henry Manders here, still in 2nd place, is a very good rider to watch for this finish because he spent a couple of years in the Super Confex team, and the tactics of Jan Raas have always been very good, so I think he's one of the riders to watch when we come into that last lap.
Well, it looked like Carl Smith trying to nip away, Paul, off the front of the group. New professional this year, part of the Royal Shapes team. And Miller keeping things in check in the white and red jersey at the front. And while the Fagor team would like this bunch not to make contact, others have other ideas. Szostek looking over his shoulder to see what they can see down the long finishing straight. And the main field winding the way out from the town hall into New Street now. Well-tried finishing circuit this over the years in the centre of the city of Birmingham, and it's seen some very dramatic results as well.
Well, Phil, a terrible thing for the riders on a circuit like this, especially as the bunch is closing down, as you can hear the race commentator all the way around on the PA system, and you know that the bunch is coming down behind you, and it's like having a running commentary on your own doom.
Yes, often, well, there's a plastic bag there, and it appears to have got stuck on the back rider. Well, if it has, that's Manders, and it has. Well, that's very strange. This is a repeat of Paris-Roubaix this year, when it was Thomas Wegmuller who was brought to a halt. He stopped Manders, in fact. That's Merguialdi just dropped away there with the red top on. Szostek's realised it and accelerated. That's a tragedy. Mander in the distance there, serviced by the neutral service team, and now by his own team, and he's back in action. I think he may well have taken a new bike. Fagan's gone through on him, so the gap, about 20 seconds he's lost, and now that's an absolute tragedy. Henri Manders has lost this race because of a plastic bag in his back wheel. these four riders will not feel at all sympathetic as they now contest the last lap or so of the race. Carl Smith here again trying to slip ahead of the field, and look at this, Szostek wants more action from Merguialdi.
As you can see, Merguialdi coming through here, but Johan Lammerts in second place. Another Dutch rider who has spent a couple of years, several years with Peter Post in the Rally Panasonic team. In fact, in 1981 won the Tour of Flanders. He's another very good tactician, one to watch when we get to the finish.
Well, we'll see. In fact, he hasn't won a race for the last 2.5 years. Well, maybe his luck will change today. That's Johan Lammerts in the leading breakaway. This is the main pack filing around the roundabout outside the town hall. And we're back with Adrian Timmis, who I really feel looks the best of this group. He's had this nonchalant look on his face ever since he arrived in Birmingham. He knows the circuit extremely well, of course, and he still wants some more work out of Lammerts. He does his little bit of pacemaking at the front and now searches for the back of these other three riders. Manders, by the way, has been joined, or has rather joined Ian Fagan in pursuit, but they are gaining, but I don't think they're gaining quick enough. Merguialdi of Spain from the BH team. Good to see them at last settling into this race. They had a thoroughly forgettable first 2 days, and it was feared at one time they mightn't be seeing this far in the race, but they are, and they're in this break. There in the distance is Manders and Fagan, and they're putting in a marvellous pursuit here, while at the front it's Timmis, and now it's Szostek goes. Szostek goes, switches sharply across. Merguialdi tries to grab his wheel. Timmis realises it too, so too does Lammerts, but they formed a threesome behind, and Szostek is continuing the attack. A very good move indeed.
A very good move by this first-year professionals. He goes through with 1 lap to go. He's taken the most crucial time, the time when everybody's wondering, deciding where they're going to save a little bit for the sprint, and he's taken them down the back straight. And it's amazing to notice that he was the one who was the most nervous before. He was looking around to see where the bunch is going, where the bunch is coming from, and he's gone away now.
What a great time to break away. Willie DeBosche will be uncontrollable tonight if he lands a double for the ADR team today. He said this morning he thought that the pottery he received in Stoke-on-Trent was the finest prize he'd ever seen in world cycling. Now he's got the chance here of doing the double in the Midlands. Well, we'll see. Szostek's gone clear at the moment. The other three have definitely taken up the chase, and that's rather spoiled the pursuit by Manders and Fagan, because they're now being pegged a little bit off the back. This is Szostek then, going clear at the moment. And look at the gap he's got. So Noel Szostek, 21 years of age, qualifies, of course, for the red jersey of Rob Holden, but too far behind overall to endanger Rob Holden's lead today. Szostek then slowing down a little bit now. Merguialdi is the rider from the Tour de France this year who's taking up the pursuit. It's getting ever so close now. The finish is in the distance here. Merguialdi's making contact, and we're looking at a lap rider on the left. Forget him, it's the man in the lime green we're watching. Here he is, Noel Szostek. It's looking as though he may have this now. He's got just about a kilometre to go to the finish. Why he's looking over his shoulder, he really should not do that. He wants to put his head down and go for home because he's in the lead. So Szostek, and I think he'll pop out of the crowd on the right of the picture. There he is, and look at this, Paul. Johan Lammerts has accelerated on a huge gear. He's got his back wheel. Johan Lammerts is going straight by him. Lammerts is going to make it first. Johan Lammerts, and Szostek is fuming. He hits his handlebars. Well, he might. He lost that race, I think, rather than Lammerts winning it. But Johan Lammerts, his first win as a professional for 2.5 years. The main field then filing in now, and the big sprint is on. McLaughlin again is taking the top place from the bunch over the line. That will be 7th place for Joey McLaughlin today, so he's still showing he is a man to be reckoned with in the big sprints. Let's have a look at that replay again. Lammerts came from nowhere. He just took the dive, grabbed the wheel of Szostek, didn't waste hardly a second before he went for the inside, and Szostek was sold out here. But Lammerts, too, had not very much more left, but he got the victory. Well, there we are, confirmation, a win for Holland this afternoon. Johan Lammerts, Szostek of Belgium 2nd, Merguialdi was 3rd. But Joey McLaughlin keeps his lead in the green points jersey. He's presented to this marvellous crowd here in Birmingham, and the crowd that seems to be following us all the way round. McLaughlin leads the points then, Elliott is 2nd, and Bichot is 3rd. Malcolm Elliott, the traditional champagne and the traditional drowning. He's done this since Newcastle this week, of all the press. The Lord Mayor of Birmingham there watching Malcolm Elliott. Here he is, top of the pile again. McLaughlin is second, Yates is third, and Roach is fourth.
Malcolm, 2 short stages today, but probably one of your toughest days on the tour.
Yeah, we've had to do quite a lot of work today, both this morning and this afternoon. Chasing breaks, not that they weren't too important for us, weren't too dangerous, but yet we still had to keep a check on the time that they gained. Otherwise things just get out of hand, so you've got to ride nevertheless.
A very defensive day for you personally.
Yeah, but I finished the day, well, actually 1 second ahead of McLaughlin, so things are still really as they were before today. So we're going into tomorrow, the hardest day now, with it all to ride for.
Team Fagor have helped you so much over the past 4 days. What was the feeling today? Because I suspect Roach was beginning to attack at times.
Well, no, it wasn't. I mean, it was just covering the moves. When Roach went away, it was going with riders who looked dangerous and keeping our interests represented. But we've had to do a lot of work, and but nevertheless we've done it, and the guys are just working tremendously. You just hope that we can keep it going through tomorrow, and I feel if I hang on to the jersey tomorrow, then if I get to Westminster with the jersey, it's an easier race to control there on the flat circuit at Westminster. So tomorrow is the crunch day.
Well, those 2 stages today, by professional cycle racing standards, were only short, but it gave the riders the real chance to show their true colours, and in fact they were excellent racing days in the Kellogg's Tour of Britain. A win then this morning for Belgium, and this afternoon a win for the Netherlands. Well, the Kellogg's Tour is now on the eve of the longest day of the race, 151 miles from here in the centre of Birmingham down to Bristol. After this hard day, Malcolm Elliott and the Fagor boys may well find themselves on the defensive now as we go off towards the city of Bristol. Join us again tomorrow night and see what happens. Until then, good night.